My sister Chloe always had a way of making her problems my emergencies. But this time, her small favor felt like a giant boulder about to crush the life I'd carefully built for myself. Saying no felt like the hardest thing I'd ever done, but little did I know, it would unravel a secret that would change everything. My name is Olivia, and for the longest time my life revolved around keeping the peace, especially within my family. My younger sister Chloe was the sun around which our family seemed to orbit. She was vibrant, impulsive, and perpetually in some kind of self-made crisis. I, on the other hand, was the steady one, the reliable older sister who always had a plan and, more often than not, a solution to Chloe's latest predicament. I'm in my late 40s now, and I've finally carved out a life for myself that I genuinely enjoy. I have a cozy little house with a garden that I pour my heart into, a job I find fulfilling as a librarian, and a close circle of friends. It wasn't always this way. For years, I felt like I was constantly putting my own needs on hold to help Chloe navigate her chaotic life. Chloe is 5 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, she seemed to command all the attention. My parents adored her, often overlooking her missteps with a fond shake of their heads while holding me to a much higher standard. It wasn't that they didn't love me, I think, but Chloe just had this magnetic personality that drew people in and a knack for playing the victim whenever things didn't go her way. Over the years, I'd bailed her out of countless situations, from unpaid bills and impulsive shopping sprees to relationship dramas and career stumbles. I always did it out of a sense of obligation, a feeling ingrained in me since childhood that it was my duty to look out for my little sister. But honestly, it was exhausting. It felt like every time I started to get my own life on track, Chloe would need something, and I'd find myself back at square one. 3 years ago, I finally put my foot down. Chloe had asked me to co-sign a loan for a new business venture, a trendy boutique she wanted to open. I knew in my gut it was a bad idea. Chloe had a history of starting projects with enthusiasm only to lose interest when the going got tough. I had my own financial goals, a modest retirement fund I was diligently building, and the thought of being on the hook for another one of Chloe's ventures sent a wave of anxiety through me. "Chloe, I can't," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle but firm. "I just don't think it's a wise investment for me right now." Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled as she accused me of not believing in her dreams, of being selfish and unsupportive. The familiar guilt trip started, and for a moment I almost caved. But then I remembered all the times I'd sacrificed my own needs for her, the vacations I'd postponed, the things I'd gone without. This time, I stood my ground. "I do believe in you, Chloe," I said, "but I also need to be responsible with my own finances. Maybe you could look into a small business loan or find a partner who can invest." She huffed, crossing her arms. "It's just a small favor, Olivia. You're being so dramatic. It's not like I'm asking for a handout. I just need a little help getting started." That phrase, "just a little help," always grated on my nerves. It usually meant a significant amount of time, money, or emotional energy on my part. We went back and forth for a while, with Chloe alternating between tears and accusations. Eventually, she hung up on me, leaving me feeling guilty but also strangely relieved. Life went on. Chloe didn't speak to me for a few weeks, but that wasn't unusual. She often used the silent treatment as a way to punish me when I didn't do what she wanted. I tried to focus on my own life, enjoying the peace and quiet. Then, about a month later, I received a message from Chloe. It was a picture message of a sonogram with the caption, "Guess what?" My heart sank. Chloe had always talked about wanting a family, but she was also notoriously irresponsible when it came to relationships. The father was someone she'd been dating for only a few months, a charming but unreliable musician who, as far as I knew, was currently finding himself in another state. I called her immediately, trying to sound supportive while also expressing my concerns. As I suspected, the musician was no longer in the picture, and Chloe was facing the prospect of being a single mother. My protective instincts kicked in, and despite our recent conflict, I offered my help in any way I could. "Oh, Liv," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. And just like that, the familiar dynamic was back. I found myself attending doctor's appointments with her, helping her set up the nursery, and offering financial support where I could. I told myself it was different this time, that I was helping my grandchild as much as I was helping Chloe. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and a few months later, my niece, Lily, was born. She was a beautiful baby, and I instantly fell in love with her. I spent a lot of time at Chloe's apartment, helping out with Lily, bringing over meals, and just being there for my sister. It felt good to be needed, to feel like I was making a difference. However, as the initial excitement of Lily's arrival wore off, I started to notice a pattern. Chloe seemed to expect me to be available at her beck and call. If she wanted to go out with friends, I was the default babysitter. If she needed money for something, she'd casually mention it, assuming I would offer to help. One Saturday, I had planned to spend the day working in my garden, something I rarely had time for during the week. Chloe called me around 10 a.m., her voice sounding frantic. "Liv, can you come over? I have a hair appointment and Lily is being impossible." I sighed, looking out at the sunshine and the flower beds waiting to be tended. "Chloe, I had plans for today. Can't her dad help?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You know he's not around, and it's just for a few hours. Please, Liv, I really need this." I hesitated. I knew she did need a break, and the thought of Lily being upset tugged at my heartstrings. "Okay," I said reluctantly. "Give me an hour to get ready." This became a regular occurrence. My weekends were no longer my own. I was constantly on call, ready to drop my own plans to help Chloe. I started to feel resentful, but every time I tried to set boundaries, Chloe would remind me how much she needed me, how Lily needed me, and the guilt would creep back in. One evening, I was at Chloe's apartment, helping her with Lily's bedtime routine. Chloe was scrolling through her phone, seemingly oblivious to the fact that I was the one rocking Lily to sleep. Suddenly, she gasped. "Oh my God, Liv, you won't believe this!" she exclaimed, showing me her phone. It was a picture of a lavish vacation, a group of friends lounging on a white sandy beach with crystal clear water. "Looks nice," I said, trying to sound interested. "It's Sarah's birthday trip to the Bahamas. Everyone's there. I wish I could have gone." She sighed dramatically. "It must be so nice to just get away and relax." I looked at her, holding her sleeping baby in my arms, after having spent my entire Saturday taking care of Lily so Chloe could get her hair done. The irony was not lost on me. "Chloe," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "maybe if you spent a little less on non-essentials, you could afford a vacation." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go. The lecture." "I'm just saying," I continued, "you bought that new designer handbag last week, and those expensive baby clothes. Maybe you could cut back a little." "It's not the same thing," she retorted. "A vacation is an experience, and Lily deserves the best." "And what do I deserve, Chloe?" The words just blurted out before I could stop them. She looked at me, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm constantly here, helping you with Lily, giving you money when you need it, and I haven't had a vacation in years. I'm tired, Chloe. I feel like I'm always giving and I'm not getting anything in return." Her face hardened. "So, you're keeping score now? Is that what this is about?" "No," I said, feeling frustrated. "It's about feeling taken for granted. It's about feeling like my life doesn't matter as much as yours." We argued for a while, the same old cycle of accusations and guilt trips. I left her apartment that night feeling drained and defeated. I knew things couldn't continue like this, but I didn't know how to break the pattern. A few weeks later, Chloe called me again, this time with a different kind of request. She sounded nervous and hesitant. "Liv," she began, "I need to ask you something, and I know you're going to be mad." My stomach clenched. "What is it? Remember that loan I asked you to co-sign for the boutique?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "Well, I kind of went ahead and opened it anyway." My jaw dropped. "You what? Chloe, I specifically told you I couldn't co-sign. How did you get a loan?" There was a long pause. "Mom and Dad co-signed for me." I felt a wave of anger wash over me, not just at Chloe for going behind my back, but at my parents for enabling her yet again. "You're kidding me," I said, my voice shaking. "They know how I feel about this. They know about your track record." "They believe in me, Liv," Chloe said defensively. "And it's a really great opportunity. The boutique is doing really well." "Really well?" I scoffed. "Chloe, you've been open for 2 weeks." "Okay, well, it has the potential to do really well. But there's a bit of a cash flow issue right now." I could see where this was going. "And you need my help?" "Well, not exactly, but Mom and Dad had to put up their house as collateral for the loan, and things are a little tight for them right now. They were hoping maybe you could help with the monthly payments for a while." I stared at the wall, trying to process everything. My parents had risked their home for Chloe's impulsive business venture, and now they expected me to bail them out. The audacity was staggering. "No, Chloe," I said firmly. "I can't. I won't." "But Liv, it's Mom and Dad's house. If the business fails—" Her voice trailed off dramatically. "Then maybe they should have thought about that before they agreed to this," I said, my anger rising. "I told you I couldn't co-sign for a reason. This is not my responsibility." "You're being so heartless," Chloe cried. "They're our parents." "And they're adults who made their own decision," I retorted. "I'm not going to jeopardize my financial security because they can't say no to you." We argued again, the conversation ending with Chloe hanging up on me, her words echoing in my ears. "I can't believe you're so selfish." I sat there for a long time, feeling a mix of anger, frustration, and a deep sense of sadness. It felt like my entire life had been a constant struggle to balance my own needs with the demands of my family. And for the first time, I realized that I couldn't keep doing it. I had to prioritize myself, even if it meant disappointing them. The next few weeks were tense. Chloe and my parents barely spoke to me. I received a few guilt-tripping texts from my mother, but I stood my ground. I knew I had made the right decision, but it didn't make it any easier. Then, one evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of an Instagram post from Chloe. The picture showed her posing in front of her boutique, looking radiant and successful. The caption read, "So grateful for my amazing family who always believed in me." Beneath the picture, there were comments from my parents praising her and expressing their pride. There was no mention of the financial strain they were under or the fact that I had refused to help. It was like I didn't even exist. Something snapped inside me. It wasn't just the blatant disregard for my feelings or the public display of a false narrative. It was the realization that my family was living in a fantasy world where Chloe was always the star, and I was just a supporting character whose role was to provide whatever she needed without question. I decided then and there that I was done. I couldn't keep living my life according to their expectations, constantly sacrificing my own well-being for a family that didn't seem to truly see or appreciate me. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to create some distance, to build a life that was truly my own. I started by muting their social media accounts and putting their numbers on silent. It was a small step, but it felt liberating. I focused on my work, my friends, and my garden. I started saying yes to things I wanted to do and no to things I felt obligated to do. It was surprisingly freeing. A few months passed, and I started to feel a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I still thought about my family, of course, and there were moments when I missed them, but the constant anxiety and resentment had lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of self-respect. Then, one Tuesday morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone rang. It was my mother. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Olivia?" Her voice sounded strained, almost scared. "Hi, Mom. What's wrong?" There was a long pause. It's about Chloe." My heart sank. "What happened?" "The boutique. It closed down last week." "Oh," I said, trying to sound sympathetic but not surprised. "And, well, the loan, We can't afford the payments." Her voice was barely a whisper. I took a deep breath. "Mom, I'm sorry to hear that, but you know I can't help." "I know, honey. It's just, we don't know what we're going to do. We might lose the house." Her voice broke. I felt a pang of guilt, but I reminded myself that this was their decision, their risk. I had tried to warn them. "Mom, have you looked into refinancing or talking to the bank?" I suggested, trying to sound helpful without offering financial assistance. "We've tried everything," she sobbed. "Your father, he's been so stressed. His health hasn't been good." I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. My father had been having some health issues lately, and the thought of him being seriously ill worried me. "Mom, I need to go to work," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "But please take care of yourselves. Maybe you can talk to a financial advisor." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I knew I should feel sorry for them, and part of me did, but another part of me felt a sense of weary resignation. This was just another crisis orchestrated by Chloe, and my parents were once again caught in the middle. And somehow, they still expected me to fix it. I spent the rest of the day feeling unsettled. The guilt was gnawing at me, but I also felt a strong sense of self-preservation. I couldn't go back to being their safety net. I had to protect the life I had built for myself. That evening, I received a text message from Chloe. It was short and to the point. "Are you happy now?" I stared at the message for a long time. Was I happy? Not exactly. I was sad that things had come to this with my family, but I was also relieved. Relieved that I had finally set boundaries, relieved that I was no longer carrying the weight of their expectations. I typed out a reply. "I'm choosing myself, Chloe. That's not the same as being happy about your situation." Her response was immediate. "You always were selfish." I didn't reply. I turned off my phone and went out into my garden. The roses were in full bloom, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the turmoil I was feeling inside. As I deadheaded the spent flowers, I thought about the future. It wouldn't be easy, navigating this new distance with my family, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Hope for a future where I could finally put myself first, without guilt or apology. A few weeks turned into a couple of months. The silence from my family was deafening. I occasionally checked my mother's Facebook page, a habit I hadn't quite managed to break, and saw pictures of Chloe and Lily, but nothing about my parents' financial situation. It was as if everything was normal, except for the glaring absence of me. Then, one Saturday morning, I received a certified letter in the mail. My name and address were typed neatly on the envelope, but there was no return address. A sense of unease settled over me as I opened it. The letter was from a law firm. My eyes scanned the page and my blood ran cold. My parents were being sued by the bank. They had defaulted on the loan for Chloe's boutique, and the bank was moving to foreclose on their house. A wave of panic washed over me. Despite everything, they were still my parents. The thought of them losing their home, the place where I grew up, was devastating. I immediately tried to call them, but neither of them answered their phones. I tried Chloe, but her phone just rang and rang. I felt a desperate urge to do something, anything. But what could I do? I didn't have the kind of money needed to bail them out, and even if I did, would it really solve anything? Or would it just enable Chloe's behavior and perpetuate the cycle? Torn and conflicted, I decided to drive to their house. It was a familiar route, one I had taken countless times over the years. But this time, the closer I got, the heavier my heart felt. When I arrived, the house looked the same as always, the familiar yellow paint slightly faded, the garden overgrown. My father's old pickup truck was parked in the driveway. I took a deep breath and walked to the front door, my hand trembling as I rang the bell. My mother opened the door, her eyes red and puffy. She looked older, more defeated than I had ever seen her. She didn't say anything, just opened the door wider and let me in. The house felt heavy with unspoken words. My father was sitting in his armchair in the living room, staring blankly at the television, which was muted. He barely glanced at me when I came in. Chloe was nowhere to be seen. "Mom, I got the letter," I said softly. "I'm so sorry." She just nodded, tears welling up in her eyes again. "We don't know what to do, Olivia." "Have you talked to a lawyer?" I asked. "We met with someone, but it doesn't look good," she said, her voice breaking. I looked at my father, who still hadn't acknowledged my presence. "Dad?" I said gently. "Are you okay?" He finally turned his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and resentment. "What do you want, Olivia? Here to gloat?" His words stung, but I tried to remain calm. "No, Dad. I'm here because I'm worried about you and Mom. Is there anything I can do?" He scoffed. "You could have helped us with the loan payments. That would have been a start." The familiar blame game. I took a deep breath. "Dad, we've been over this. I told you I couldn't co-sign, and I can't afford to make those payments now." "So, you're just going to stand by and watch us lose everything?" he said, his voice rising. "Dad, I didn't cause this," I said, my own voice trembling slightly. "Chloe made this decision, and you and Mom supported her." "I tried to warn you." He stood up, his face red with anger. "You've always been jealous of Chloe. You never wanted her to succeed." "That's not true," I exclaimed, my own anger finally surfacing. "I've always supported Chloe, but I also believe in being responsible. This wasn't a viable business, and you knew it." "Get out of my house, Olivia," he said, pointing towards the door. "I don't want to see you." Tears streamed down my face as I turned and walked out. My mother followed me to the porch, her hand reaching out to touch my arm. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice full of sorrow. "Don't listen to him, he's just scared." "Mom, I don't know what to do," I said, my voice choked with tears. "I want to help, but I can't fix this." She sighed, patting my hand. "I know, dear. We made our own bed. We just have to lie in it." As I drove home, I felt a profound sense of sadness and helplessness. My family was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. A few weeks later, I received another message from Chloe. This time it was a string of angry texts, blaming me for everything that was happening. She accused me of being heartless, of abandoning our family in their time of need. I didn't respond. I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't keep engaging in this toxic cycle of blame and guilt. I knew I had to create even more distance to protect my own mental and emotional well-being. I decided to consult a therapist. I needed help processing my feelings and figuring out how to navigate this new reality. My therapist was kind and understanding. She helped me see that I wasn't responsible for my family's choices and that it was okay to prioritize my own needs. Over the next few months, I focused on myself. I spent more time with my friends, I took a pottery class, and I even went on a short solo trip. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I felt incredibly lonely and missed my family terribly. But I also started to discover a sense of inner strength and resilience I never knew I had. About 6 months after the foreclosure, I received a letter from my mother. It was a handwritten letter, the first one in years. My heart pounded as I opened it. She wrote about how difficult things had been. They had lost their house and were now living in a small apartment. My father's health had deteriorated, and Chloe had moved back in with them, bringing Lily. She wrote about how much they missed me and how sorry she was for everything that had happened. The letter wasn't an outright apology, but it was the closest thing I had ever received from her. She didn't ask for money or help. She just wanted to reconnect. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to reach out, to offer comfort and support, but another part of me was still wary, afraid of being drawn back into the old patterns. I decided to write her back. I told her that I was sorry to hear about everything and that I hoped they were doing okay. I didn't offer any financial help, but I did say that I was open to talking when they were ready. A few weeks later, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant at first, but then she started to talk, telling me about their new life, about my father's health, about Lily growing up. It was a difficult conversation, filled with unspoken resentments and lingering pain. but it was also a start. Over the next year, I slowly started to rebuild a relationship with my parents. It wasn't the same as it had been before. There was a distance, a cautiousness on both sides. But we were talking again. I visited them occasionally, and they came to my house for holidays. Chloe remained distant, still holding on to her anger and resentment. One afternoon, my mother called me, her voice sounding different, more subdued than usual. "Olivia," she said, "I have something to tell you." "What is it, Mom?" I asked, a sense of foreboding washing over me. "It's your father. He passed away this morning." The news hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything that had happened, he was still my father. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to process the news. I went to the funeral, of course. It was a small, quiet affair. Chloe was there with Lily, looking pale and drawn. We didn't speak much, but there was a sense of shared grief in the air. After the funeral, my mother asked if I could stay for a while. We sat in the living room, surrounded by memories. She told me stories about my father, about our childhood, about the good times we had shared. "He was proud of you, Olivia," she said softly, her eyes filled with tears. "Even if he didn't always show it." Her words surprised me. I had always felt like I was a disappointment to him. He worried about Chloe so much," she continued. "He always wanted to protect her." I nodded, understanding dawning on me. My father's protectiveness of Chloe had often come at my expense, but it had stemmed from a place of love, however misguided. As I was leaving, my mother hugged me tightly. "Thank you for coming, honey," she said. "It means more than you know." A few months later, I received a message from Chloe. It was a picture of Lily, now a toddler, smiling and waving at the camera. The caption read, "She asks about you sometimes." It was a small gesture, but it felt significant, a crack in the wall of resentment she had built between us. Life goes on. My relationship with my mother is still a work in progress, but we talk regularly. Chloe and I are slowly starting to communicate again, mostly through occasional messages about Lily. I still have my own life, my own friends, my own home. I still prioritize my own well-being. But I've also learned that family, in all its messy and complicated forms, is important. It may not always be perfect, but it's still family. Sometimes saying no is the hardest thing you can do, but it can also be the most necessary. It can lead to painful consequences and difficult choices. But sometimes, it's the only way to break free from toxic patterns and build a life that is truly your own. And sometimes, in the aftermath, there's a chance for healing, for understanding, and for finding a new kind of peace, even amidst the broken pieces of the past.